Hey everyone, I'm Army Gaming. Welcome back to my channel, and welcome to a Monster Legends video, a Monster Legends analysis on Copycat. Copycat's superpower is to provoke his rivals to attack and then copy their skills. Malaire loves to have Copycat in his team because of the frustration he causes on enemies. Seeing him on the battlefield is one of his favorite hobbies. And so here we have Copycat, the newest and latest Thunder legendary monster from the Supervillains Hideout maze. I gotta say, monster design, I absolutely love it. And skills wise, stats, everything about this monster I love. One of the newest Thunder monsters, and you're going to see he's definitely quite phenomenal. So with that being said, let's jump right into his stats. For his power stat, it comes in at 3432, it puts him in 15th place, and as of the time recording this video, there's a total of 29 Thunder legendary monsters, so it's nothing too amazing. However, that shouldn't matter because this monster is not an attacker, he's actually a deny monster, so his power stat, it could be whatever, and he's still, let me tell you, he's still amazing. As for his life stat, 29255, from all the Thunder legendary monsters, this actually puts him in 9th place, tied with Ukaduma, so it's definitely above average. But then his speed stat is what we need to talk about. 3465, this used to be, as many of you know, probably, the main go-to deny speed. All the old top tier deny monsters, they have this speed stat, 3465. The newer top tier deny monsters, they tend to have 3498. But honestly, that shouldn't deter you from liking Copycat for two reasons. The main reason is the Thunder element hasn't really caught up with having deny monsters with a base speed of 3498. There really isn't many. Honestly, the fastest monster in the Thunder element has 3663, and that belongs to Mercurius, and he's not a deny monster. Next is Hydrotilla the Boldcaster, he has 3509, and realistically, Hydrotilla shouldn't even be in here. It's just a mistake, he should really be in the water elements. After that is Thor, also with 3509. Thor is definitely not an attacker. Zyla is the next fastest monster with 3498, but no surprise, Zyla is an attacker. Then we have Ntek, one of the newer Thunder monsters, and he actually is a deny monster. And so honestly, I would say that Ntek is currently the true fastest deny monster, not counting Hydrotilla, in the Thunder category. Then we have Thyra, Aro, Fel, Teskita, all of those have the 3476 base speed, but again, none of them are also deny monsters. We also have Griffin, I forgot to mention him. And then moving on to the 3465 category where Copycat is at, that's when we finally have Tempest, who has AoE stun. So as you can see, in his own element, the Thunder category, he's one of the top tier fastest deny monsters in his own element. But aside from that, the reason I say it doesn't really matter if a monster has 3498 or 3465 base speed is because the advantage of being an attacking player is that you get to activate your Rune Guardian. And when you activate your Rune Guardian, if you have it maxed out, all of your runes are 10% more effective. So I'm pretty sure, I haven't calculated this, but I'm pretty sure that if you take a monster that has 3465 base speed and another monster that has 3498 base speed, and that 3498 base speed monster is on defense with 3 level 10 runes, and you have your monster with 3 level 10 runes, and then you activate your Rune Guardian, I'm pretty sure you're going to have the upper hand in terms of speed, because 10% is really significant. Keep in mind, every level 10 speed rune increases your monster speed by 35%. So by activating your Rune Guardian, that's an additional 3.5% boost for every single rune you have, and don't even get me started with team speed runes. And so I'm pretty sure, I can't say definitely, but I'm pretty sure, and I will check this one day, that the speed being 3465, 3498, probably even 3454, or even a little less, you're still going to get a speed advantage in terms of being an offensive player. So stats wise, Copycat, I gotta say, he's definitely more than alright. And what makes this monster even better, and actually all of the Supervillains Hideout maze monsters even better, is the trait. This trait is phenomenal. Hardened and immune to possession. So the original hardened, right? 20% less accuracy against any status effect. But aside from that, they have a guaranteed immunity to possession. How amazing is that? I think we can all agree that possession is the best control effect. You know, you have three. You have stun, you have freeze, and possession. If a monster is stunned, okay, they get stunned. The next turn, they're immune to stun. But while that monster is stunned, they basically can't use any attack. Then we have freeze. Same thing. If the monster's frozen, they can't use any attack. But the cool thing about freeze is that you can chain freeze. And what I mean by that is that you can freeze back to back to back. You can pretty much freeze indefinitely if it lands. After freeze, we have possession. What makes possession amazing is that the monster is essentially on your team. You know, when they're possessed, they're going to attack themselves, their team. If they happen to get their ultimate, they're going to ult their own team. If they happen to attack themselves, well, it's awesome because they're using up an attack, which means the cooldown on that attack is going to activate, and they're using stamina. So being possessed is really the best or worst thing that can happen, depending if you're attacking or defending. So possession is the best. So to have monsters that are guaranteed immune to possession, and furthermore, they have a 20% less accuracy to get hit by anything else, including all of these new obscure effects, you know, like Total Blind or like Stop Time. How amazing is that? So I gotta say, trait, I love that these new monsters all have a guaranteed immunity to possession and a 20% less chance to get hit by any other negative effect. That is just amazing. And in terms of these monsters' relics, he can hold the Sword Relic, and he can hold the Staff Relic. And so let's talk about those relics. I think in terms of the Staff Relic, Oblation Staff can work really well for this monster. When hitting, removes 108 points of stamina from all targets. And so let me just tell you, this monster has an AoE skill. So AoE means it hits all of the enemy targets. So when he hits all the enemy targets, if it lands, they're all going to lose 108 stamina points. Okay, keep that in mind. We'll come back to this. So Oblation Staff, if you have this relic, if you can max it out, that'll be pretty good. But even if you can max it out, the other relic he can hold is the Sword Relic. And if we look at the Sword Relic, there's quite a few he can actually wear, or a few he can use, I should say. So 2 of them are the Gold Relics. After hitting, if the target is possessed or stunned, 108 points of stamina are removed from the affected enemy. After hitting, if the target is frozen or stunned, the wearer is given 30,600 points of armor and physical protection. So, the reason I bring this up is because this monster, he's basically a poor man's Ruby. He has a skill that can apply 2 control effects to the enemy monsters, which means it's very likely you're going to land a freeze, a possession, or a stun. So he can hold either of these swords, one of which will give him armor, the Ice Breaking Great Sword. The Soul Shattering Great Sword will remove stamina. So if you combine this with Oblation Staff, keep in mind right now I have a maxed out at 35, but if you're using the Soul Shattering Great Sword and the Oblation Staff, you don't need to have both of them maxed out since legendary monsters only have, what, 140 stamina? So you could probably make them, what, like level 20, 64 and 64, that's more than enough to immobilize them and drain their stamina. So that's good. And if you don't have these gold swords, you can even do maybe the Soul Shattering Sword, the silver one. After hitting, if target is 66 points of stamina are removed from the affected enemy. Because again, you have a skill that's just like Ruby Explosion, that you're going to apply 2 control effects to the enemy monsters. So how amazing is that? Oh boy, this monster, those relic slots, they actually work really well on this monster. So with that being said, I've talked a lot about, I normally don't talk that much about monsters during the introduction, but I gotta say, I'm really impressed with this monster. Design, stats, skills, trait, the relics, everything so far I like. I haven't even talked about skills, but let's get into the skills. There's a secondary reason I like this monster, and that's because he basically has copied a lot of other monster skills. So we'll talk about that when I see it. So we'll start off with the ultimate skill. 9 million volts. Look familiar? It's a copycat of Voltic's 10 million volts. Deals massive special damage to all enemies. I gotta say this ultimate is very lacking on Copycat. Copycat is not an attacker. He doesn't need a skill like this. Honestly, if you were to get his ultimate, it's probably not going to do much. Like I said, his power stat in the Thunder category, it's 15th place. 34-32, it's honestly nothing too bad. But considering that's all it does, just pure damage output, you're going to be better off using his regular skills. So ultimate, I'm extremely disappointed, but that doesn't even matter because you're not relying on ultimates in a game. You're relying on a monster's basic skills. So with that said, let's move on to skills group 1. We have Rock Maze, Ugly Cuts, 6 inches Punch. And from these skills, the only one that's potentially worth running, you could argue, I personally wouldn't run it, but I do want to bring it up, is 6 inches Punch. Applies stun to one enemy, applies burn to one enemy. So it's an automatic stun and burn. It deals no damage. When a skill deals no damage, it has a higher likelihood of landing. So it has that 98% accuracy to land the stun, and as well for the burning. The burning is guaranteed to land if the monster doesn't have hardened, or bulwark, or tough, or some sort of trait that makes them less likely to get hit with a negative effect. So 6 inches Punch isn't. So again, you might want to consider it. What I want to say about the other skills is that Rock Mace, this seems like a copycat for maybe Rockantium, not sure. Ugly Cuts, this seems like a steal from General Omniscience. Just the skill names is what I'm talking about. 6 inches Punch sounds very familiar. It might be Pandakin, I'm not exactly too sure. It just sounds very familiar. And the reason I say that is because when we move on to skills group 2, take a look at these skill names. Magma Trap, this is a steal, most likely from Bottom Magma. There might be some other monsters that have this. Semi-loop damage, clearly he stole this from Timerion. Elders and Dragons, he definitely stole this from Kihaku, especially when you see what the skill does. But moving on, Magma Trap deals moderate special damage to all enemies, applies burn to all enemies, requires cooldown. 30 damage, 25 stamina cost, 2 turn cooldown. It's an AoE burning that lasts for 4 turns. Burning will reduce the enemy's HP by 15% for those 4 turns. And so honestly, this skill is really straightforward, nothing too flashy, right? It's just an AoE burn. And I'm going to say this skill honestly might actually be worth running on Copycat. We'll get back to a discussion on the skills when we talk about everything. Semi-loop damage is the next skill. Applies skill mirror to itself, requires cooldown. No damage, 27 stamina cost, no cooldown. Oh, one thing I need to say about Copycat. The information on Wiki might not be exactly accurate. I've been seeing pictures, Simon has sent me some pictures from his skills that they actually have a higher stamina cost or a lower stamina cost or a higher cooldown than they actually say. And so if that actually is the case, then just be wary of that once you get this monster, if you get this monster. So for that reason, we're going to primarily be focusing on what the skill actually does. And this skill is basically just a self-skill mirror skill, which goes with this monster's ability, right? He's supposed to copycat. So if he gets attacked, he's going to reflect the skill it's potentially a really good skill to use, and pretty much at any time, right? Even if you go first, you can apply the skill mirror to yourself, and then if the enemy monster does an AoE attack, you're going to be reflecting it back on the enemy. So skill mirror skill could be a really useful skill to have. Elders and Dragons. The Kihaku skill deals heavy special damage to one enemy, applies possession and freeze to one enemy, requires cooldown. 45 damage, 33 stamina cost, 2 turn cooldown. It does possession and freeze. What more can you ask for? Actually, Kihaku has a skill just like this. Off the top of my head, it's called Augusta or something, AGSTU, something like that. Anyhow, possession and freeze to a single enemy monster. What more can you want, right? If the enemy monster is immune to freeze, you're going to possess them. If he's immune to possession, you're going to freeze him. If the enemy monster just has a hardened trait, a tough, a bulwark trait, well, you have a higher likelihood of landing something as opposed to nothing. So Elders and Dragons, definitely a must-have skill. With that said, we can move on to skill group 3, and the first skill we have is 15,000 volts. He stole this from Voltic. Deals moderate 30 damage to one enemy, gives 1 extra turn to itself, requires cooldown, 35 damage, 20 stamina cost, 3 turn cooldown. I gotta say, this skill, as much as you probably want to run it, I gotta say, it might not be worth using, because it doesn't really do anything except deal a little bit of damage. Once again, this monster is not an attacker, you're not gonna be running strength on this monster, so 15k volts, you probably don't need it. There are, however, some benefits of using it, don't get me wrong. The best example I can think of is if the enemy monster does a total blind against you and you get total blinded. Well, if you have this extra turn skill, you can use this skill to get rid of the total blind and then proceed with the actual attack. That can also apply if maybe you had a blind or a daze that was going to last for one more turn. You can use 15k volts to get rid of that blind or that daze, whatever negative effect it may be, and then you can proceed to using your actual attack with greater accuracy. So that blind and daze example, it would even apply to sunburn. That probably won't be happening too often. Total blind can definitely happen depending which monster you're attacking. I also forgot to mention this monster is in the superheroes book and the evil book, so keep that in mind in the kind of opponents he'll face. So you can definitely get total blinded, but I don't think that's really the best reason to run this skill. And then another far-fetched example that could happen is if you get trait disabled and then get possessed, there's a likelihood that your monster, your copycat, does 15k volts, and then that allows you to do an actual attack, but that's highly unlikely. So as much as I hate to say it, I really can't recommend 15k volts. It sucks. I really want to say go ahead and run it, copy Voltic, but I don't see that much of a purpose. The best purpose being if you get total blinded, which also you have the hardened trait, so total blind would only land 80% of the time. So I can't recommend it. I'm sorry, 15k volts, not recommending it. You could use it if you want to, but not personally going to be recommending it. Start Lord is the next skill, and this skill is, it's not a copy of anyone. I think it's his own skill. Deals moderate thunder damage to an enemy, applies skill mirror to itself, requires cooldown, 40 damage, 30 stamina cost, no cooldown. This is one of those skills that's supposed to have a cooldown, according to Simon, a 3 turn cooldown. Same with semi-loop damage. I think the reason they decided to give a cooldown is because 0 cooldown on this would be too powerful, because even if you got hit with cooldowns activated, you would have a protection, you'd have skill mirror on yourself. So cooldowns activated couldn't touch you because you can still deny the enemy, because whatever they did to you, you'd reflect it back at them. And so I think that's the reason they had to give these skills a cooldown. Anyhow, apply skill mirror to itself. So, in terms of just what the skills do, semi-loop damage is skill mirror to yourself, it deals no damage. Start Lord, you attack an enemy monster with 40 thunder base damage, and then you give yourself skill mirror. Which is better? Honestly, it depends on you. How strong is 40 damage on a monster with no strength runes? That's worth testing out. It also costs 3 extra stamina points. Is that a significant enough reason to not run Start Lord over semi-loop damage? I don't know. Keep in mind your monster can't be possessed, so you don't gotta worry about getting possessed and attacking your own teammate with 40 damage. So as of right now, I would say Start Lord is a little better just because 40 damage might be significant enough to wipe out the enemy monster. Whereas that 3 stamina points, I don't think that's gonna be too significant to where you can't use an attack. Although I will say that if you have stamina regeneration, that does recover 28 stamina points. So if you had no stamina whatsoever but had stamina regeneration, you would be able to do semi-loop damage but not Start Lord. So you're pretty much gonna have to decide for yourself which skill is worth running, or maybe you want to run both. But anyhow, with all of that being said, the must-have skill for this monster, the copycat of Ruby, is Copy Implosion. I don't know why it's Implosion, it should really be Explosion. Anyhow, deals low special damage to all enemies, applies 2 random control skills to all enemies, requires cooldown. 2 random control skills. Wow. So this skill deals 40 damage, costs 59 stamina, has a 2 turn cooldown. I believe it's not actually 59, it's actually less. Anyhow, this skill has a chance to stun, to freeze, to 2 turn possession, to 1 turn possession, to mega stun. I'm surprised it can't do mega freeze. Anyhow, it can do a lot, right? And that's why I'm saying you can run either sword, you can run the oblation staff, and aside from, like, if he does stun, freeze, or possession, he's going to be draining stamina, draining with oblation staff. This monster can essentially drain all of the enemy's stamina and deny them. incredible, incredible, incredible. Now, the one thing about this monster, the reason I say this monster is a poor man's Ruby is because obviously Ruby is a little better. Ruby's skill, Ruby Explosion, actually has 95% accuracy according to Monster Wiki, and so has a 5% higher likelihood of landing. It's treated as if it attacks a single target. For example, if you put Oblation Staff on Ruby and you do Ruby Explosion, only the main monster you target, that's the monster that gets drained stamina. With Copycat, all of the enemy monsters are going to get drained their stamina. The only way to do that with Ruby is to do Laying Odds instead of Ruby Explosion. However, Laying Odds only applies one random control effect, whereas Explosion does 2 random control effects. So there's some pros and cons to that. Going back to Copycat, if Copy Implosion actually lands, then yes, Oblation Staff will drain stamina from everyone, and then they're going to get hit with some control effect, which is just amazing. So Copycat, quite a phenomenal monster. He has truly stolen the best from some of the best monsters in Monster Legends. So it goes without saying there's 2 must-have skills in my opinion, Copy Implosion and Elders and Dragons. Those are the 2 must-have skills. And once you have those 2 skills, honestly, you can run whatever you want. The other 2 skills, they don't matter. I think I would personally recommend one of the 2 mirror skills, probably Start Lord, and then Magma Trap for the AoE burning. But like I said, this monster really only has 2 must-have skills, and then if you don't want Magma Trap, if you don't want one of the mirror skills, well then you could run 15k volts for those situations where hey, it just comes in handy. And don't discount 6 inches punch, which can also come in handy because of that stun and burning. The more I look at this skill, the more it does remind me of Pandakin, because I'm pretty sure Pandakin can do a stun and burning in one, and it's called like 6 inches punch. But yeah, it's basically a guaranteed stun and burn on a monster that isn't hardened and isn't immune to stun, so that can be quite effective. And when you're trying to decide exactly what skill to run, just try to think what is going to happen with Copycat. On the first turn, on probably 99% of your battles, you're going to want to do Implosion to try to deny everyone. On turn 2, you're probably going to want to do Elders and Dragons to further deny one of the enemy monsters. So on turn 3, what do you want to do? Do you want to do a mirror skill? Do you want to do an extra turn skill? Do you want to maybe stun? I think stun would probably be the most effective thing to do, unless they're still immune to stun thanks to your Implosion. Or, going back to what you can do on turn 2, instead of doing Elders and Dragons, maybe it'd be more beneficial to do an AoE burning. That's assuming all 3 of the enemy monsters are still alive. If they're not alive by turn 2, well then maybe having AoE burn isn't that effective. So once again, the only thing I can say for certainty is to run Implosion and Elders and Dragons. Oh, you know what actually just occurred to me? Because this monster is immune to possession and has the harden trait, he's actually a really phenomenal monster to put on defense, especially if you do run 15k volts. So here's another incentive to run 15k volts. If you put this monster on defense with Implosion, with Elders and Dragons, 15k volts, and then you have your choice of Mirror, AoE Burning, or the stun skill, this monster is pretty much AI proof. And the reason being is that Elders and Dragons, that does possession and freeze. Implosion, that's just the skill you want your AI to do. 15k volts, this grants you an extra turn, which allows your monster another chance of doing one of the skills you want him to do. So assuming you run Magma Trap, well that's an AoE burn. Not the most effective, but at least it does something. If you run 6 inches punch, it's a stun and burn. Once again, not the most effective, but at least it still has a chance to immobilize someone and apply DOT. And if you run one of the mirror skills, well then that makes it so the enemy has to be extremely careful with what skill they decide to use against your team. They can't do an AoE for fear of reflecting it back on your own team. They can single target, but if they single target Copycat, he's going to reflect it on whatever monster attacked him. Or he can single target someone else, but then that leaves Copycat as still being a main threat. So maybe 15k volts isn't a skill you should disregard. Maybe you should run Implosion, Elders and Dragons, 15k volts, and then the mirror skill. That could possibly be a good skill set. Like I said, in my personal opinion, Implosion, Elders and Dragons, your must-have skills. The last 2 skills you can do whatever you want. As for runes for this monster, pretty straightforward. Give this monster 3 speed runes. The absolute best speed runes you have, you want him to go first, you want him to do Implosion, you want him to dominate the game. Once again, as for books, he's in Evil Legions and Superheroes. He's also a Thunder Monster. And in my personal opinion, he's a pretty darn phenomenal monster. But now I want to hear from all of you guys. What do you guys think about Copycat? Do you like him? Do you dislike him? Let me know about his skill names. Is there something I missed? Is there something I got wrong? If so, did he actually copy from another monster? Let me know in the comments below. But seriously, let me know your opinion on Copycat. What do you think about him? How do you think he can compete in the Evil Legions book, in the Superheroes book, in the Thunder category? Voltic and Zyla dominate the Thunder category for their amazing attack potential, but maybe Copycat for his amazing deny potential can finally be some competition for Zyla and Voltic. I don't know guys, whatever thoughts are going on through your mind, let me know in the comments below. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you all next time.